Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Man, am I pumped today. The NBA is back. I'm going to get into opening night in the NBA. My way too early NBA season predictions coming up just around the corner. The Bengals upsetting the Steelers. What's up with that on a Monday night? And then, of course, my top 5 NFL MVPs and Malkin's moments. That is all in store for you today. And not to mention, on Monday, I've got a great show. I can already give you the sneak peek. All right. A Wisconsin football offensive lineman, David Moorman's going to join the show. Cannot wait to get into that. But first, NBA is back. NBA is back. What a tremendous way to get the ground running. It's crazy to believe it's been 71 days since the conclusion of the NBA Finals and now the start of the NBA season. The Warriors taking on the Brooklyn Nets, Steph Curry versus Durant and Kyrie. And let me just say, has KD really not played an NBA game in 500 days or over 500 days? He looked absolutely sensational. He did not miss a beat. Came out right out of the gates, made his first 3 shots, 10 points in the first quarter. He looked agile. He was explosive. Pull up, one dribble. Pull up was unstoppable. Listen, finished with 22 points in 25 minutes on nearly 50% shooting. This guy looked sensational. And one of the reasons why we've continually dubbed KD as one of the best, if not the best scorer of all time is because of how effortless he makes it look. If you were watching that game yesterday and saying to yourself, how has Kevin Durant, who just ruptured his Achilles over a year and a half ago, coming back, playing in an NBA game, absolutely demolishing the Warriors? You're not the only one asking yourself that question. He was absolutely sensational. He makes it look effortless, and he can do everything. He doesn't rely on his athleticism, which is one of the reasons why he is who he is. Because when you're 6'11", you can just pull up and you can just rise up over defenders and knock down shots. And that's what Kevin Durant was doing. He was hitting the 3. He was blowing by defenders on fast breaks, attacking the rim, driving hard to the basket, coming off screens and curls, hitting those pull-up mid-range shots. That's what Kevin Durant does. He looked absolutely spectacular yesterday. And to be honest, so did his counterpart. Kyrie Irving looked great too. Led the team in scoring 26 points rather. He was efficient, played limited time, and this wasn't even a ball game. They blew out the Warriors in the first quarter, and I loved what I saw from the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, this team is tremendously athletic. That's what stood out to me. This team is filled with athletes who can score. You look at their starting lineup, you got Dinwiddie in there, a ball creator, KD, Kyrie, DeAndre Jordan was grabbing rebounds, 10 rebounds, tipping out extra possessions. Joe Harris can light you up. And then coming off the bench, you got this kid in Karis LeVert who's pouring in 20 points, who could easily be a starter on any other team in the NBA. About 80% of the NBA teams he could start for. And what I just loved about them is how effortless the offense looked because they got scoring galore. They literally have playmakers out on the floor that can create shots for themselves and others at any given moment. The only thing that I noticed that I think moving forward is not a concern. It's not a huge concern, but certainly something to address. They did play a lot of isolation basketball. And that's what's defined Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for their entire careers, is their ability to score without relying on a screen, without relying on a switch. They just go into their toolkit, into their bag, and they bust out the handles and they can create their own shots. And that's one of the reasons why Kyrie has been so successful is because, yes, he's shorter, but he maybe has the greatest handle in the NBA, maybe ever. He was tremendous yesterday, and so I just loved the athleticism of this team. They're young, they're hungry, and more importantly, they will be taking this regular season seriously, just like the Clippers will, and I'll touch on their win over the Lakers in just a moment. This is a Brooklyn Nets team that is trying to develop chemistry, trying to build some camaraderie, and that is why the only issue that I had was that they were taking a bunch of one-on-one shots. Yes, they had some good ball movement at times. Yes, they could push it in transition and on the fast break. But at times the offense would get so stagnant because it can. Because you've got 3 out of the 5 players on the court at any given moment. You can just give the ball to them, stand off on the side, and let them take this waltz and do this dance. So I will admit I was extremely impressed with the Brooklyn Nets. Yes, the ball movement can be a little bit better. Yes, there was a little bit too much isolation. It was a little isocentric. But at the end of the day, Karis LeVert coming off the bench, pouring in 20, Dinwiddie, Durant, KD, and Kyrie. This team is deep. They're athletic, they're deep, they're young, and they're hungry. And that was on full display. Blew out the Warriors. It was like 36-17 at one point in the first quarter. They came out ready to go. Steve Nash is going to have a field day drawing up different offensive sets for these guys, and they were extremely impressive in the blowout. Now, on the flip side for the Warriors, there are a couple big key takeaways from that game. First of all, they were so cold, they could not hit a shot. It was like the lid was on top of the basket, especially in that first half. Steph was 2 for 10 from 3, and this is going to be the issue. Shooting is going to be the issue. We've taken for granted this run by the Warriors with Steph and Clay being perhaps the 2 greatest shooters of all time. It's amazing how much pressure they take off one another and how much space they create for the other when they're both on the floor. Now, when it's just Steph, the guys you're leaving open are scorers, but they're Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins, who combined 7 for 30 in the loss. Oubre was 0 for 6 from 3, and none of them were really even close. Andrew Wiggins, you closed your eyes and cringed every time he shot a 3 because it looked like a line drive. Some of them went in, and you're like, well, okay, much needed basket, but he's not a reliable 3-point shooter. Obviously, Draymond wasn't in the game either, but that's the big concern is there's so much pressure on Steph, who went 2 for 10 from the 3-point line, where if he's not hitting his 3-point shots, it's not that the Warriors don't have scores this year, because the difference between this year and last year is last year they didn't have any scoring. Steph was literally the only guy who could create for himself and create for his teammates. This year, Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins can create scoring, but they're not 3-point shooters. And that's the problem. That's the biggest issue. And that was the biggest issue against the Nets yesterday. The Nets shot 43% from the 3-point line, 15 of 35. Warriors were terrible. And so, yes, they have more scoring. I like Oubre's ability to get to the rim and drive hard. He had some fantastic dunks in this game. Andrew Wiggins can be explosive, but he's not a 3-point shooter. I like Eric Pascal coming off the bench, but again, not a 3-point shooter. And if anything, this game further highlighted and elucidated the importance of Klay Thompson and how big his absence is on this team. It's palpable seeing the faces of Steph, seeing the faces of Draymond and this team with Klay out. He is such a crucial and invaluable piece to this team, and it's more than just his ability to shoot the 3 ball, his ability to defend. It's his ability to take away defenders from Steph and vice versa. The amount of space that they create and the ball movement that the Warriors can generate when Klay is out there, that is what I noticed the most. That is what I noticed the most. And it was evident right from the jump that, wow, this might be a long night if Steph's going to have to do this himself. And he's not hitting his three-point shot. That's the other thing. Now, I'm still a little bit more bullish on the Warriors than I think other teams are. And I think, if anything, what this game showed is just how talented and deep the Nets are, more so than highlighting the flaws of the Warriors. It shows the tremendous potency on offense that the Nets can display. They were fantastic in this win. And again, I think the Nets and the Lakers are two of the deepest teams in the NBA. And I saw that on full display, especially with the Nets. So really impressed with Kevin Durant. Hasn't played a game in over 500 days. Comes out, looks absolutely silky smooth. He was tremendous. And it's just good for the NBA for him to be back. One of the faces of the league, missed the last season, has missed a year and a half. And now on opening night, he's featured and he delivers. And he looks like the Durantula once again. Big time win for the Nets. I was very impressed. And then the other doubleheader was the Clippers and the Lakers. Now, listen, I'm not going to make too big of a deal this game. Not going to make too much into this game right now. Clippers picked up a valuable win. Congrats to them. 116-109. But this was an extremely predictable outcome. I don't bet on sports, but if I was going to, betting the Clippers to win would have been a pretty easy bet to me. Because all the pressure coming into this game and going into this season falls on the Clippers. Lakers didn't want to. It's not that they didn't want to play this game, but they had nothing to play for. They clearly came out lethargic, a little lackadaisical. They had just received their championship rings. It's a natural emotional letdown. And you're looking at a Clippers team that the last time they stepped out onto the floor was in the NBA bubble, and it was the biggest disappointment in the Clippers franchise history and one of the biggest disappointments in NBA history. This was a team that was up 3-1 over the Nuggets. I don't have to rehash everything. Kawhi scores 0 points in the second half. Paul George, 1 for 11 in the second half of Game 7. These guys choked this game away, and they had this bad taste in their mouth that they were trying to wash out. And now to open up this new season, you've got to watch your arch rival upstairs receive their championship rings. This was extremely predictable for them to come out much more aggressive, much more intense, and it showed. They led 39-19 at the end of the first quarter. And then obviously the Lakers started to make their run in the second, but the biggest takeaway to me, especially in that first quarter, was the presence of Serge Ibaka. I will admit that was a great addition for the Clippers. 8 points, was 3 for 4 in the first quarter. And his ability to hit the outside shot, to hit the mid-range, to defend inside, to finish around the rim, can't be overlooked. I definitely like the presence of Serge Ibaka. He made his impact immediately. He was a big-time player and big-time catalyst for their win and setting the tone early. Great locker room guy, finished with 15 points, 6 rebounds. He was a big takeaway for me, a major, major plus for the Clippers. And then, as I said, the Lakers were starting to make their run in the second quarter, and that's when we started to see their new acquisitions play well. Montrezl Harrell quietly finished 17 points, 10 rebounds, was crashing the glass, was active. And Dennis Schroeder had a near triple-double, 14 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists. Now, I'm going to touch on his impact in a second, but what happened was the Lakers had clawed their way back, and it was a 2-point game at halftime. They were tied at one point in the third quarter for about 5 minutes, and the game seemed to be hanging in the balance. If the Lakers could have taken the lead, then I don't see them losing that game. They wouldn't have relinquished it. But again, I'm not that concerned because LeBron played 28 minutes. AD played 31 minutes. These guys were kind of load managing. It's not that they weren't taking the Clippers seriously, but there was nothing for the Lakers to prove to the Clippers. There was nothing. This game was about continually getting the new pieces acclimated and working them into their system. They've got a bunch of new guys. They've only had about 9 days, it feels like, of preseason, 15 days to train together. This is a new team. And for them, the regular season and especially opening night isn't necessarily the most important victory. For the Clippers, this was huge. This was a game setter, a tone setter moving forward. Ty Lue is going to have his guys playing hard in the regular season. And I'm going to explain how that reflects in my regular season, postseason predictions coming up. But the Clippers needed to win this game. They needed to set the tone for their locker room that, hey, we mean business. And again, this is more so about the Clippers because the Lakers, listen, Dennis Schroeder brings a new element to this offense that they did not have last year. I certainly miss Rajon Rondo. I wish he would have stayed. But Schroeder provides a scoring ability, an uncanny scoring ability that Rondo just did not quite possess. His ability, Schroeder, to run the pick and roll and just pull up on the mid-range, drive hard to the basket, beat you off the dribble off a quick first step, that was impressive today or yesterday. And his ability to draw fouls and shoot well from the free throw line, I was extremely impressed with him. And again, he didn't even play more than 30 minutes, played under 30 minutes and nearly had a triple-double. But to me, obviously, Talen Horton-Tucker, I liked. He's starting to get more reps in, more run in. He had the second best plus-minus for the Lakers in 11 minutes. That's scary how deep this team is. The Lakers are so deep. But the big takeaway, along with Serge Ibaka for the Clippers, is Paul George. 33 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in 36 minutes. And again, the Clippers were going all out in this game. And Ty Lue is not going to sit back and allow his star players to take nights off like they did last year. This is a new team, a new mindset, and credit to Paul George. When Paul George, every time he plays the Lakers, which makes sense, he goes off. Last year, in the 3 matchups, his first matchup against the Lakers was on Christmas Day. He was just recovering from 2 shoulder surgeries, so he only scored 17 points. He hadn't played more than 10 games. But in the final 2 games of the season against the Lakers, 30 points, 31 points. Paul George can be that X factor for the Clippers. And again, I'm a Lakers fan, but you can't deny the talent that Paul George possesses. 33 points. He can shoot off the dribble. He's got great handle, silky smooth J, can pull up, rise up, hit the 3-point shot, drive to the basket. He's long, 6'9". But they need consistency out of Paul George. They need regular season Paul George in the postseason. Again, his averages, he averaged last season 21.5 points per game on about 44% shooting, 41% shooting from the 3-point line. In the playoffs, he did score 20 points per game, but that 3-point percentage dropped to 33%. The efficiency stopped. If the Clippers can get postseason Paul George, the amount of production and his productivity in the regular season, if he can match that in the playoffs, then you're looking at a real threat because Kawhi, you could see already Ty Lue implementing the triangle offense. He was going to work on the block in the mid-range, the little fadeaways. He was getting to his spots. He was great. Paul George was the difference in that game. And if he can play big, that's what the Clippers need. That is what will elevate them into a legit championship contender. Good start for them. But again, the Lakers not worried about them at all. Riding this emotional high. LeBron and AD played reduced minutes. This game was much more important to the Clippers, and it showed. So very predictable game. By the way, the ring ceremony was absolutely fantastic, and I love the fact that the Lakers are waiting to unveil their championship banner until they can allow fans back into Staples Center. That's a really nice gesture and something I know the fans will all appreciate. That's a really cool thing that they did. The ring ceremony was fantastic. The clean white championship jackets were tremendous. And all around, great opening day in the NBA. We got the Bucks and the Celtics tonight. Mavericks and the Suns. Cannot wait to see. That was one of my most anticipated games of this upcoming season, was that matchup. So more NBA coming tonight. Cannot wait for that. Okay. So I told you I was going to give you my NBA preseason predictions. Now, mind you, I actually tweeted this out yesterday. So if someone's going to try and hold me to that, that's fine. The proof is in the time that I tweeted out at Jonah-Malkin on Twitter. You can check it out. This is what I predicted yesterday. This was before watching the Warriors getting blown out by the Nets, before watching the Lakers lose to the Clippers. This is what I predicted. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with the Eastern Conference, lay out seeds 1 through 8, what I think the order is going to be, how I think the Eastern Conference is going to shake out, including the series wins and losses. And I'm going to do the same thing with the Western Conference and give you my NBA champion. So starting with the Eastern Conference, my number 1 seed is the Milwaukee Bucks. I love the addition of Drew Holiday, and I actually think that, again, Giannis is going to come back more motivated. The Bucks have finished with the best record in the NBA the last 2 seasons, and in a way, while Bogdan Bogdanovic would have been a huge upgrade, I actually think that the fact that they didn't ultimately trade for him and that trade fell through actually allowed this team to maintain much more depth, retain much more depth. They got DJ Augustine, who can come in and score. Torrey Craig was a big addition, a versatile wing from the Denver Nuggets. I really like that pickup. Pat Connaughton obviously still there. Bryn Forbes is a low-key under-the-radar acquisition from the San Antonio Spurs. He can shoot 40% from the three-point line. The Bucks will take the regular season seriously again, and I see them finishing with the 1 seed. 2 seeds, the Brooklyn Nets. They're going to take the regular season seriously too. I just think it might take a couple games to find that cohesion, find that team chemistry. Although if yesterday was any indication of what they're going to do moving forward, this team's going to have no chemistry issues whatsoever in the regular season. I just think that the Bucks have shown in the regular season their ability to produce wins more consistently. So I got the Nets finishing number 2. Finishing at number 3 is the 76ers in Philadelphia. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid. I love the new acquisitions of Danny Green and Seth Curry. They addressed the area they needed to address, which was shooting. You have to be able to create space for Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and those 2 acquisitions absolutely do that. Doc Rivers is going to utilize both of them much better. We'll be able to optimize and maximize their talents, and I think, again, he will have them playing hard in the regular season. So 76ers at number 3. At number 4, the Boston Celtics. I'm less bullish about the Boston Celtics than I was last season. They do obviously have Jason Tatum. They re-signed him to that massive extension. Jaylen Brown still there. Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker. The big acquisition for them was Tristan Thompson. They addressed an area they needed to address, which was rebounding, physicality inside, and some kind of protection to the rim. They needed someone to protect the rim, to rebound, and play big for them. And Tristan Thompson can do that. So I do like that. But I see the Celtics as a 4 seed. I don't see them anywhere higher than that. 5th seed, Miami Heat. I don't think they're one of those teams that are going to excel in the regular season. Their style, brand of basketball is more conducive to the postseason when the game slows down and every single possession matters. This team is still talented. Jimmy Butler's still there. Tyler Hero's still there. Dragic, Bam Adebayo just re-signed. Duncan Robinson. This team is still good. Kendrick Nunn. They went to the finals last year. They're very tactical. I just don't think their prowess will come out in the regular season. We'll see that more in the postseason. The 6th seed, the Toronto Raptors. Yes, they lost Serge Ibaka. Yes, they lost Marc Gasol. We thought they were going to fall off a cliff last year, and they finished with the 2 seed. So there's no way I'm going to count out Kyle Lowry. Van Vliet is back. Norman Powell off the bench. I think Pascal Siakam will take another step. Nick Nurse, coach of the year. He's going to get this team continually playing well. And I still think that they're a playoff caliber team. I have them in the 6th seed. In the 7th seed, the Washington Wizards. Listen, you pair Russell Westbrook with Bradley Beal in a bottom feeder Eastern Conference. There aren't too many great teams at the bottom pole in the Eastern Conference. And I think that Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal are good enough to make the postseason. They'll be fun. They'll be exciting. They'll be rejuvenated to play with another star player. And I see them making the 7th seed. And then my surprise team in the 8th seed is the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, I'm extremely high on them. Rajon Rondo, Danilo Gallinari joining. Now Trae Young with Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, John Collins. I like this team. They're exciting. They're young. They're going to score a bunch of points. They're going to fly up and down. And I see those 8 teams making it. Now, in the playoffs, pretty predictable. I have the Bucks beating the Hawks in 4 games, the Nets beating the Wizards in 5 games. And the reason I have them beating 5 is this is their first postseason together. I think it might take them a couple games to gel. And I'm going to give Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal the benefit of the doubt and give them 1 game. So Nets win in 5. I have the 76ers beating the Raptors in 5 games, 4-1. I think that Doc Rivers is going to be the difference. Coaching in the postseason is really big in the NBA. He's going to make a difference. And then I have the Miami Heat beating the Boston Celtics again, this time in 6 games. So now we go to the Eastern Conference semifinal. I have the Bucks beating the Heat, rectifying and avenging that loss last year. They beat them in 6 games. And I have the Brooklyn Nets knocking off the 76ers in 6 games just because they're way too talented. So in the Eastern Conference Finals, I've got the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets, and I've got the Brooklyn Nets beating the Bucks in 6 games. Listen, I know Milwaukee's got Drew Holiday. I like the fact that now Chris Middleton can maybe be your 3rd best guy. Giannis will improve. I just think that on paper, while in the regular season the Bucks will finish with a better record, I just think in the postseason the Nets are better. And so I see them making it to the NBA Finals. Now in the Western Conference. So table that. Nets going to the finals, winning the Eastern Conference is my prediction. Western Conference, I still have, here are my 1 through 8 seeds. I still have the Lakers finishing with the 1 seed. Now I know what you're going to say, that LeBron and AD are going to coast a little bit more in the regular season. And I do think that's true. But I think that their depth will allow them to win games. That's how good I think this team is that even if LeBron's not playing, even if AD's playing limited minutes, Schroeder, Harrell, Horn Tucker, KCP, these guys, Alex Caruso, guys can play. These guys can score points. And scoring is not going to be the issue for this team. And I think that there are a lot of games against teams that the Lakers can win. Absolutely. Peter Pajoli says, bias. Well, maybe a little bit, but you'd be lying to yourself, Peter, if you said that the Lakers weren't the best team. They're extremely deep. There's no question they're extremely deep. So I still have them finishing as the 1 seed. In the 2 seed, I have the LA Clippers. With the new coach, with Ty Lue, that is the difference. He's going to have these guys ready to go, playing hard, taking the regular season seriously. There's no more Kawhi, you need a game off every week. You'll be able to do that. No. That's not going to happen. Paul George, you want special treatment? That's fine. You can have special treatment if you're playing. There are no days off here with Ty Lue. So the Clippers will take the regular season a little bit more seriously. I just think the Lakers will finish with a better record. But the Clippers are still an elite team and one of the best top 2 or 3 teams in the Western Conference. So they're at 2. At the 3 seed, I have the Denver Nuggets. Denver Nuggets have finished with a top 3 seed in the NBA in the past 2 seasons. And I think they'll win a bunch of games in the regular season. I am less high on them this year. I do think that the loss of Jeremy Grant is big for them. He was a really versatile, athletic forward who could guard multiple positions. I think that they'll feel his absence. Yes, I like Michael Porter Jr. and Will Barton is coming back, but they didn't necessarily make many upgrades. It's more just hoping that the current talent that they have takes that next step forward. But I still see them winning a bunch of games. Mike Malone is a good coach. Jamal Murray and Jokic prove that they're a power duo. They're a dynamic duo. I see them as the 3 seed. In the 4 seed, I have the Mavericks. In Dallas, Luka Doncic will be an MVP candidate. And I actually like the acquisition of Josh Richardson from the Philadelphia 76ers. Seth Curry, while he's a great three-point shooter, he's a liability on defense. And the Mavericks, while they had the most efficient offense last year, they were one of the worst defensive teams in the league. One of the worst defensive teams in the league. Josh Richardson is a great 3-and-D player, exactly the type of player you pair with Luka Doncic and Tim Hardaway Jr. Kristaps Porzingis will be healthier. The Mavericks take another step, finish in the 4 seed. In the 5 seed, I see the Utah Jazz. Listen, how many times have we come into the season saying, oh, the Utah Jazz are going to be the 6th seed. Oh, they're going to be the 7th seed. Oh, maybe they won't make the playoffs. And every single year, they find themselves right in the thick of it. Right in the thick of it as the 4 or 5 seed. And I see this happening again. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert re-signed for a big deal. Bojan Bogdanovic will be back and healthy. Will take some of the offensive pressure off of Mitchell. Mike Conley is still there. I still like him as a solid, steady point guard. Is he getting paid a little bit too much? Probably, but I still like him a lot. And Joe Ingles they still have. And Quinn Snyder, another disciple of Greg Popovich, he's a tough-minded, tough-nosed coach, and his players buy into his system and to his scheme, and they play hard for him. And this is going to be another one of these seasons where you go into it saying, well, it's another deep Western Conference. There's no room for the Utah Jazz, and they're going to find themselves in the 5 seed. In the 6 seed, this might be the hottest take. This might be the hottest take, and especially after last night, it doesn't look great. I'm still saying the Golden State Warriors are going to find a way to make it into the playoffs, and they're going to be the 6th seed. I do think that Steph Curry is going to have a bounce-back MVP caliber season. They're going to need it from him. And again, in my opinion, they played the second-best team in the league last night in the Brooklyn Nets, even with Durant coming back and returning to basketball action for the first time in over 500 days. I'm still high on the Warriors. I think this was just a bad first matchup. Again, the Warriors were the worst team in the league last year. Like, they haven't played at all. At least the Nets, half of their team got to travel to the Orlando bubble. The Warriors haven't played legitimate basketball in, I think it was like 300-something days, like over 10 months. So I still like James Wiseman. He had 19 points in his first outing. I thought he demonstrated some really impressive skill sets, not only dribbling the basketball, but his ability to roll to the basket. He's a high flyer. I think that Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre will provide scoring for Steph. Again, I need to see more three-point shooting. And Draymond Green wasn't there. He didn't play. I like Eric Pascal coming off the bench. And Steve Kerr, I still think is a good coach, and I'm really bullish on the Warriors. I wish Klay Thompson was healthy. I wish we could see this team at full strength. We don't. They've robbed us of that opportunity, unfortunately, the basketball gods. I still like the Warriors at number 6. At number 7, the Portland Trail Blazers. I just find it hard to believe that on paper, this team is too talented not to make the playoffs. The fact that they had to sneak into the postseason through a playoff tournament for a play-in tournament still baffles me, really, just because Damian Lillard was injured. But you still have Lillard, CJ McCollum, Melo resuscitated his career. He's rejuvenated again. He's playing well. Nurkic, excuse me. Zach Collins is back and healthy. And the big acquisition is Robert Covington. No one's talking about Robert Covington is an ideal 3-and-D guy. And they're just too good on paper to not make the postseason. Rodney Hood is back recovering from a tear in the Achilles. So I like the Portland Trail Blazers a lot at number 7. And at number 8, I have another surprise team, the Phoenix Suns. Some people might have them a little bit higher. I still think they'll comfortably make the playoffs, but I think they'll finish as the 8th seed. Chris Paul, the new trade for him, I like. Jay Crowder, his ability to be physical and stretch the floor, hit threes. Again, with Miami, he shot over 40% from the three-point line. His season average was in the 30s, but with Miami, he shot over 40%, which tells me what they need are guys that can draw defenders away from them. And Crowder, you leave him open, he can make you pay. So, not to mention DeAndre Ayton, I think will take that next step. Okay, so in the Western Conference, in the postseason, I have the Lakers sweeping the Suns 4-0. Good story. Happy to see Booker make his first postseason with Chris Paul. That's exciting. Lakers win that one easily. I think the Clippers are going to beat the Trailblazers in 5 games because they've been able to beat the Trailblazers like the last 2 times they've faced them in the postseason, and they're just way better. This is the shocker, and this is no knock against the Denver Nuggets. Again, I'm probably too high on the Golden State Warriors. I think that I think the Warriors will upset the Nuggets in 6 games this year. If they can just get to the playoffs, which is the big question mark. I just love Steph in the postseason. I think that they match up pretty well against the Nuggets now. Now you have a guy in James Wiseman who can defend Jokic. You don't have to throw Draymond Green on him. And it's a hot take. I have the Warriors upsetting the Nuggets in the first round, and then I have the Mavericks beating the Jazz in 6 games. Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, they should have beaten the Clippers last year in the first round if it wasn't for that bogus ejection of Kristaps and for him injuring his knee. Otherwise, I think the Mavericks probably would have knocked off the Clippers last year. So now we get to the Western Conference semifinals. I have the Lakers beating the Mavericks easily in 5 games. I respect Luka, so I give him 1 game. But come postseason time, the Lakers are going to turn it on. Their depth is going to be too much. And overall, I think they're just going to win that game. And then I see the Clippers beating the Warriors in 6 games as well, just because they're better. So I got the Western Conference Finals, Lakers versus Clippers. I got the Lakers beating the Clippers in 6 games. The Clippers barely beat the Lakers yesterday, and Kawhi and Paul George each played 8 more minutes than the Lakers stars. And LeBron James played 28 minutes yesterday. Paul George played 36. Again, they were taking that game off. So I just think the Lakers on paper, honestly, this year, I honestly think the Lakers are better. Last year, you had a legitimate argument that the Clippers on paper were the more talented team. But not this year. Not this year. So I've got the Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA Finals. And because this is the first year with KD and Kyrie, KD's still recovering from the Achilles injury. Lakers are just too good. They're too good this year. I see them repeating and beating the Nets in 6 games. So those are my NBA preseason predictions. Blake Ruffino, Pelicans will win the West. Well, I certainly like the New Orleans Pelicans. I thought about putting them in there, and I just couldn't. The West is too deep. The West is just too deep to put the Pelicans in there. I love Zion. He's an absolute draw. He's a tremendous athlete. But, yeah, I don't know. New Orleans Pelicans, I love them. But I don't think Brandon Ingram can be your second best player. I personally don't believe that. Happy he got his money. But just don't quite see that happening. Okay. Before we transition to the NFL, again, appreciate you making J&J Media Network Morning Joe a part of your Wednesday morning plans. Crazy, it's already Wednesday. Every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. So, Monday Night Football, for some reason, the Steelers keep finding themselves in these Sunday night, Monday Night Football games. Why? I don't really know. But right now, outside of the Rams losing to the Jets, that was the most surprising loss of the week, was the Steelers losing unfathomably in a terrible fashion to the Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals. That baffles me. But again, if you lose to the Jets, who hadn't won a game all season, that's worse. But I want people to think about this. So the Steelers have lost 3 straight games. They've lost 3 straight games. And all those 3 losses have come during this stretch, right? It hasn't been like they've sprinkled in these losses. They've come consecutively. But if we were to rewind the clock and go back to the preseason and ask yourself this, which teams going into the year did you think were going to make the postseason from the AFC? There were about 9 teams that you were thinking about. Maybe the Bills, Miami, Pittsburgh, Browns, Ravens, that's 5, Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts, that's 7, Kansas City Chiefs, 8, and maybe the Raiders at 9. Those were really the 9 teams. And out of those 9 teams in the AFC, there were really only 3 teams coming into the season that you thought had a legitimate shot at winning the AFC. The Kansas City Chiefs were an overwhelming favorite. The Baltimore Ravens, and maybe the Tennessee Titans, maybe the Browns. That's it. So we never had the Steelers in this Super Bowl contender status. So while people are freaking out that they've lost 3 games, I want you to take a step back and think about what were your expectations for this team going into the season. I think part of the reason why people are freaking out is because they had won 11 straight games. So the pundits had elevated them into that Super Bowl status, which they never should have been a part of to begin with. And because they started losing games, now it's the timing of the losses, which is why this is big. Not the fact that they've lost 3 straight, because if they would have lost 3 games, but it was sprinkled in throughout the entire season, I don't think people would be freaking out as much. So when you're going to watch a movie, the Jason Bourne films, one of my favorite films, a high action-packed drama. Great movie. Matt Damon is fantastic. It's entertaining. It's captivating. The plot is tremendous. But when you're watching Jason Bourne, you're not saying to yourself, hey, this movie's going to win the Oscar. You're not saying this is going to win the Oscar because movies that win the Oscar possess a certain level of sophistication and features interesting characters, more eclectic, esoteric types of topics. Parasite won the Oscars. Titanic won the Oscars. Maybe movies based on real events in history. Jason Bourne's great. Matt Damon's great. Tremendous film. One of my favorites. I'll watch it again and again. That's not a movie that we expect to win the Oscar. Fast and Furious with Vin Diesel. Great movie. Entertaining. He's tremendous. The car chases, the opening scenes are exhilarating. And you get a thrill just watching those films. But no one says to themselves, yeah, I think Vin Diesel is going to win Best Actor or Fast and Furious is going to win Best Picture at the Oscars. But if your expectation going into that movie was that Fast and Furious or Jason Bourne was going to win the Oscars, then you would raise your level of expectation. You would raise your standard. Right now, the important thing is to just appreciate what the movie is, appreciate what Fast and Furious is, appreciate what Jason Bourne is. The Steelers coming into this season were never pegged as a Super Bowl caliber team. We viewed them as a playoff team, which right now they are. They are a playoff team. That's no knock on them. There's only a couple teams that make the Super Bowl. There's only 2 teams that make the Super Bowl, and there's really only about 6 to 7 teams every year that are really in the discussion. So this team went 8-8 last year under Mike Tomlin without Big Ben and a third-string quarterback named Devlin Hodges. They went 8-8 with Devlin Hodges and Mason Rudolph. You remember that? Mason Rudolph and Myles Garrett? That feels like ages ago. That's a team that went 8-8. So we come into this season and everyone's freaking out because, oh, the Steelers all of a sudden aren't a Super Bowl caliber team. Well, when were they ever? All that this 3-game losing streak elucidates is that this team is a playoff team. They've been hit a little bit by the injury bug, especially on defense. And if anything, they've surpassed what we thought that they would be right now. No one would have thought they would have been 11-3 at this point in the year. We thought they were a playoff team. And that's what they are. And appreciate that for what it is. Still in a great spot. They cinched a playoff spot. They clinched a playoff spot 2 weeks ago. So no one says that they're going to be a Super Bowl team. We said they're going to be a playoff team, and they are. Okay, so now really quickly, my top 5 MVP picks right now, and then my Malkin's moments. So I'm going to start at number 5, Josh Allen. Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills. He's been fantastic. 4,000 passing yards, third best QBR, 79.3. The Bills have been perhaps the hottest team, and they've played like the hottest team in the NFL for the last 8 weeks. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. Their only loss came to a Hail Mary throw from 43 yards out from Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins, who had to go up and make a catch in triple coverage in the end zone over 3 Bills defenders to win the game. If not for that Hail Mary, they've won 8 straight games. They lead the AFC East. They got the second best record in the AFC, tied for the second best record in the NFL. And Josh Allen has been tremendous. He's coming off his best QBR game, over 98 against the Broncos, was absolutely fantastic. And so Buffalo Bills are rolling right now, and it's all because of Josh Allen. At number 4, got Derrick Henry. I understand running backs don't normally garner this much consideration, but have you seen what Derrick Henry has been doing? 1,679 rushing yards, not only a career high, far and away the best in the NFL, tied for the most rushing touchdowns with 15. He's had over 100 rushing yards in 5 out of the last 6 games. He's rushed for over 200 yards in 2 games this year, 4 times for his career, which is the most ever all time for any running back. He's been absolutely fantastic. And teams game plan for Derrick Henry. Going into the game, you say, who do we need to stop? We need to stop Derrick Henry. They go in game planning for him, and he still produces. That's when you know someone is extremely valuable. In the beginning of the season, it was Ryan Tannehill. And then as the season progressed and waned, Derrick Henry took the mantle and has literally been carrying this team on his back. He's been absolutely fantastic. He's averaging a career high in yards per carry, 5.2. So I got Derrick Henry at number 4. At number 3, Russell Wilson has some of the shine and some of that glimmer dropped a bit. Yes, I've had to knock him down a couple pegs because of his interceptions, but he's still throwing a career high 37 touchdowns to just 13 interceptions. And second most accurate thrower of the football this year. Completion percentage is second in the NFL at 70.2. They lead, in my opinion, the hardest division, most difficult division in football, the NFC West, because of him. And they got a top 5 record in the NFC. And the reality is, he's been asked to do so much. He hasn't had a run game for the majority of the season. He's finally getting some kind of run game now. But he's the second leading rusher on the team with over 400 rushing yards behind Chris Carson, who's missed so many games. So finally, they've got some semblance of a run game. They've got some semblance of a defense with Carlos Dunlap finally getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But prior to that, they were asking Russ to do so much. And he's still a really, really valuable quarterback and valuable player in this league. And what he's asked to do day in and day out is just second to none. Is second to none. And for the majority of the season, he's had to carry his team on his back. So I've got Russ at number 3. At number 2, Aaron Rodgers. Now, this is a nip and tuck race between Aaron Rodgers, and I'm sure you can guess who my number 1 MVP is right now. But Aaron Rodgers, listen, I have him at number 2 just because he hasn't had quite as many eye-popping statistical games as Mahomes. He's had 5 games of 300 or more passing yards, which is nice, but he hasn't looked quite as dominant. Listen, still 3,800 passing yards, best touchdown interception ratio in the league, 40 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, best QBR in the league, 83.5. And Aaron Rodgers has been fantastic. Best record in the NFC, 11-3, tied for second best record in the NFL. And while he does have Devontae Adams, they don't have so many offensive weapons at his disposal. They really don't. So they ask him to do a lot. And right now, it's a close race again between him and Mahomes for 1 and 2. I just haven't seen quite as many eye-popping moments and statistical games from Aaron Rodgers right now. Not to mention, his ownership rebelled against him and drafted his replacement. So now you light a fire under Aaron Rodgers. You don't even give him a weapon or someone additional that he needs. You draft his replacement. So ownership clearly sending a sign that we're trying to make life more difficult for you. And so he's had to deal with that hanging over his head. And yet he's coming out producing, and they've got the best record in the NFC. So he's at number 2. At number 1, Patrick Mahomes. What does your eye test say? When you watch any other quarterback, any other player, do you really think Mahomes isn't the MVP? 4,400 passing yards, or 4,600 passing yards, rather. Like 36 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, second best QBR, 83.4 in the league. And the pass that he threw to McCole Hardman, I can't stress this enough. Second and goal at the 5-yard line. You're scrambling, you're backpedaling, you throw off your back foot, flick it softly into the corner of the end zone, into a shoebox for only McCole Hardman to make the catch and a toe drag touchdown. Absolutely fantastic. The Kansas City Chiefs, 13-1, the best overall record in the NFL, obviously the best record in the AFC. And this is how you really know. This is the tell that a quarterback is the MVP. When you're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, when you're playing the Saints, and all you need is 1 first down to win the game, or basically to force the opponent to take a couple timeouts by running the ball. And if you collect 1 first down, you win the game. And instead, your coach, Andy Reid, gives you the ball to throw on 3rd downs to pick up the first down, and that's when you know you're the MVP. You'd rather have your best player throw for it, knowing the risk of an incompletion, allowing the opponent to keep their timeout, and you allow him to throw it. Like, he's got 2 games of over 400 passing yards, 7 games with over 300 passing yards. This guy is through the roof. He won the MVP 2 years ago throwing 5,000 passing yards. He's going to surpass that in these next 2 games. So that's my top 5 MVPs right now in the NFL. Finally, Malkin's moments for you. This was a great one. So the Nevada Wolfpack, their football team, just wrapped up their regular season. They knocked off Tulane in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl game. There's so many different bowl games, it's hard to keep track of now in college football, especially the names. But what happened was, after the game, the players dumped a Gatorade cooler filled with French fries onto their head coach, Jay Norvell's head. Now, I love the Gatorade cooler being dumped on the winning coach in football. It's one of the greatest traditions, one of the greatest victory traditions in sports. And the fact that they added a new element, a new wrinkle to it, and instead of dumping Gatorade, they filled it with French fries and dumped it on their head coach, was a sight to see. The school did get fined, unfortunately, But a great way to cap off and cement a 7-2 season. Well, that's all the time that I got for you today. Thank you so much for joining me on Morning Joe and J&J Media Network on Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube every Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Make sure to tune in to Monday. Wisconsin offensive lineman David Moorman will be joining the show. I got a great show for you on Monday. But as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.